The winter wind cut through the city streets like a knife. 17-year-old Maya pulled her thin jacket tighter around her shoulders, but it did little to keep out the cold. Her fingers were numb, her stomach growled with hunger, and her feet ached from walking all day. She had been living on the streets for 3 months now. 3 long months of sleeping in subway stations, washing up in public restrooms, and surviving on whatever food she could afford or find. It wasn't supposed to be like this. Just a year ago, she had a home, a bed, and dreams of a future. But life has a way of changing everything in an instant. Maya stopped in front of a large glass window. Inside, she could see people sitting at tables, laughing and talking. The warm glow of the lights made the place look like something from a dream. Steam rose from cups of coffee. Plates of food passed by, carried by waiters in crisp uniforms. The smell of fresh bread drifted out every time someone opened the door. This wasn't just any restaurant. The Grand Bistro was one of those fancy places where people celebrated birthdays and anniversaries. The kind of place where a single meal could cost more than Maya had seen in weeks. But tonight she wasn't thinking about that. She was just thinking about how cold she was and how hungry she felt. She reached into her pocket and counted her coins for the 3rd time that day. $2.35. It had taken her all afternoon to collect that much. An elderly woman had given her $1 for helping carry groceries. A kind businessman had dropped some coins into her cup while she sat outside the train station. Every penny mattered when you had nothing. Maya looked at the menu posted by the door. Her heart sank as she read the prices. Even the cheapest item, a bowl of soup, cost $6. But maybe, just maybe, they would be kind. Maybe they would understand. She had to try. The cold was getting worse, and she hadn't eaten anything since yesterday morning. Taking a deep breath, Maya pushed open the heavy glass door. A wave of warmth hit her face. The restaurant was beautiful. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling. White tablecloths covered every table. Soft music played in the background. For a moment, Maya forgot about her situation and just stood there, taking it all in. But that moment didn't last long. She could feel the eyes on her. People turned in their seats to stare. A woman wrinkled her nose and whispered something to her husband. A young couple looked uncomfortable and turned away. Maya knew what they saw. Dirty clothes, messy hair, mud-stained shoes. She was out of place here, and everyone knew it. She walked slowly toward the counter, trying to ignore the stares. Her shoes squeaked against the polished marble floor with each step. The sound seemed impossibly loud in the quiet restaurant. She clutched her coins tightly in her hand, feeling them warm against her palm. Behind the counter stood a man in an expensive suit. His name tag read manager. He was tall with gray hair slicked back and a stern expression on his face. He was arranging menus when Maya approached, but he looked up as she got closer. His eyes moved from her face down to her worn-out shoes and back up again. His expression changed from neutral to disapproving in less than a second. Maya cleared her throat. Her voice came out quieter than she intended. "Excuse me, sir. I was wondering. I have $2.35. Could I maybe get something? Small? Just the soup, or maybe half a portion of something?" The manager, Mr. Thornton, didn't even pretend to consider it. He crossed his arms over his chest and looked at her like she was a problem to be solved. "I'm sorry, but we can't serve you. Our establishment has certain standards to maintain." Maya felt her cheeks burn with embarrassment. "Please, sir, I've been outside all day. It's so cold and I haven't eaten since—" I said no. His voice was louder now, sharp enough that people at nearby tables could hear. "We have paying customers here. Customers who expect a certain atmosphere. I can't have you disturbing them." Maya looked around. People were definitely watching now. Some looked sympathetic. Others looked annoyed, as if her presence was ruining their evening. She wanted to disappear, to melt into the floor and never be seen again. "I understand," she said softly, her voice trembling. "But I have money. It's not much, but—" Mr. Thornton raised his hand to cut her off. He snapped his fingers, and a security guard appeared from somewhere in the back. The guard was a large man with broad shoulders and an expressionless face. "Please escort this young lady out," Mr. Thornton said, already turning away as if Maya no longer existed. The security guard placed a firm hand on Maya's shoulder. "Come on, miss. Time to go." Maya felt tears sting her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Not here. Not in front of all these people. She let the guard lead her toward the door, her head down, her coins still clutched uselessly in her hand. They walked past tables of people enjoying their meals, past a family celebrating a little girl's birthday with a chocolate cake, past a couple holding hands across the table. Each step felt heavier than the last. And then she saw it. In the corner of the restaurant, partially hidden by a decorative screen, stood a grand piano. It was beautiful, with glossy black wood that reflected the chandelier lights. The lid was open, revealing the white and black keys inside. A small sign next to it read, "Live Music Thursday, Saturday." Maya stopped walking so suddenly that the security guard nearly bumped into her. She stared at the piano, and suddenly she wasn't in the restaurant anymore. She was 8 years old, sitting next to her mother on a piano bench, her mother's hands guiding hers, showing her which keys to press. Her mother's voice, patient and loving, teaching her scales and melodies. "Miss, we need to keep moving," the security guard said, not unkindly, but Maya couldn't move. Memories flooded her mind. Her mother had been a pianist, not famous but talented. Music had filled their small apartment every day. When her mother got sick, the music stopped. When her mother died, everything stopped. Her father couldn't handle the grief and left. Maya went into foster care, bouncing from home to home, never staying anywhere long enough to feel like she belonged. But the piano had always been there in her memories, her mother's greatest gift. The one thing that had made Maya feel connected to something bigger than herself. "I used to play," Maya whispered, not really talking to anyone in particular. The security guard shifted uncomfortably. "That's nice, miss, but we really need to go now." Maya looked at him, then back at the piano. Something stirred inside her chest. It wasn't rational. It wasn't smart. But in that moment, with her dignity already stripped away and nothing left to lose, Maya made a decision. Before the guard could react, she pulled away from his grip and walked quickly toward the piano. Behind her, she heard Mr. Thornton shout, "Stop her!" She heard footsteps following. She heard gasps from customers. But she didn't stop. Maya reached the piano and sat down on the bench. The leather was soft, well-maintained. She placed her dirty, cold hands on the keys. They felt smooth and familiar, like greeting an old friend after a long absence. "Get away from there right now." Mr. Thornton's voice was angry, almost frantic. He was rushing toward her, his face red, but Maya's fingers had already found their position. Her hands remembered even if her mind had tried to forget. And as Mr. Thornton reached out to pull her away, she pressed down on the keys. The first note rang out, clear and pure, silencing everything else in the restaurant. The note hung in the air like magic. Everything stopped. Mr. Thornton froze mid-step, his hand still reaching toward Maya. The security guard stood motionless. Conversations died mid-sentence. Even the clinking of silverware on plates went silent. Maya closed her eyes. Her fingers moved to the next keys, then the next. Muscle memory took over, pulling up something she hadn't realized was still buried deep inside her. The melody started simple, quiet, almost fragile. Like the first drops of rain before a storm. She was no longer sitting in the grand bistro. In her mind, she was 9 years old, practicing in their tiny apartment. The afternoon sun streamed through the window, making dust particles dance in the air. Her mother sat beside her on the bench, her presence warm and comforting. "Feel the music, sweetheart," her mother had said, placing a gentle hand on Maya's shoulder. "Don't just play the notes. Let them tell a story. Every key you press should mean something." Maya had looked up at her mother, confused. "But how do I make them mean something?" Her mother had smiled, that beautiful smile that Maya still saw in her dreams. "You play from here," she had said, touching Maya's chest right above her heart. "Not from here," touching her head. "The best music comes from what you feel, not what you think." Back in the restaurant, Maya's fingers moved faster now. The melody grew stronger, more complex. She wove together pieces her mother had taught her. A bit of Chopin, some Mozart. But then something else emerged, something that was entirely her own. The music became a conversation between past and present, between the girl she used to be and the person she had become. Her hands flowed across the keys like water. The soft notes spoke of gentle memories. Her mother braiding her hair, making pancakes on Sunday mornings, reading bedtime stories. The loud, crashing chords told a different story. The hospital room, the beeping machines, the day the music stopped forever. A tear rolled down Maya's cheek, but she didn't wipe it away. Her fingers kept moving, kept speaking the words her voice couldn't say. The music shifted again, darker now. It told of the foster homes, one after another. Packing her small bag of belongings, learning not to unpack too much because she'd only have to pack again soon. Sleeping in beds that never felt like home. Sitting at dinner tables with families that weren't hers. In the restaurant, people sat completely still. A woman at table 12 had stopped with her wine glass halfway to her lips. A businessman who had been checking his phone now held it limply in his hand, screen dark. The little girl whose birthday they were celebrating watched Maya with wide, amazed eyes. Maya's music grew more intense. The notes came faster, her fingers dancing across the keys with increasing urgency. This was the part of the story she'd never told anyone. The part she tried not to think about. The night she turned 17 and aged out of the foster system. The social worker's apologetic face. "We've done all we can, Maya. You're an adult now. You'll have to figure things out on your own." The shelter had been her first stop. It was crowded, loud, and smelled like disinfectant and despair, but it was warm and safe. She'd found a job washing dishes at a small diner. It didn't pay much, but it was enough for food and the shelter bed. For 2 months she thought maybe she could make it work. Maybe she could build a life small as it was. Then the shelter closed. Budget cuts, they said. Not enough funding. 47 people suddenly had nowhere to go. Maya remembered standing outside with her backpack, watching them chain the doors. An older man next to her had just shaken his head and walked away. "Third time this has happened to me," he'd muttered. The music Maya played now was chaotic, angry. Her fingers pounded the keys. This was the sound of sleeping in subway stations, of jumping at every noise, of always being afraid, of people looking through you like you don't exist, of security guards moving you along, of being hungry, so hungry your stomach aches, of the cold that seeps into your bones and never quite leaves. Mr. Thornton stood watching, his earlier anger completely gone. His face had gone pale. He looked at Maya as if seeing her for the first time, really seeing her. Not as a problem or a disturbance, but as a person. A young girl who had somehow survived things he couldn't imagine. The security guard had backed away completely. He leaned against the wall, his arms crossed, but his expression was no longer blank. There was something in his eyes now. Recognition, maybe. Or respect. But Maya wasn't playing for them. She wasn't playing for anyone in the restaurant. She was playing for herself. For her mother. For every night she'd cried herself to sleep. For every morning she'd woken up not knowing where her next meal would come from. For the dreams she'd abandoned and the hope she'd tried so hard to keep alive. The music began to change again. The angry crashing chords softened. Something new emerged from the chaos. Not happiness exactly, but something like resilience. The melody spoke of small kindnesses. The elderly woman who'd let Maya help with her groceries. The librarian who pretended not to notice when Maya spent all day in the warm building. The coffee shop owner who sometimes gave her day-old pastries. These tiny moments of humanity in a cold, indifferent world. Maya's playing grew gentler now, more introspective. Her fingers moved more slowly, pressing each key with deliberate care. This was the sound of sunrise after a long night, of finding a warm spot to sleep, of discovering that you're stronger than you thought you were, that you can survive another day and then another and then another. In the restaurant, several people had tears streaming down their faces. They didn't bother wiping them away. There was something sacred about this moment, something that demanded honesty. An older man at table 6 thought of his own daughter, safe and warm in college. What if she had nowhere to go? What if circumstances had been different? A young woman in a business suit remembered her own struggles. 5 years ago, she'd been evicted, had slept in her car for 2 months while working 2 jobs to save enough for a new apartment. She'd never told anyone. People thought she'd always had it together. But she understood. She knew what it meant to pretend everything was fine while your world fell apart. The little girl whose birthday it was turned to her mother and whispered, "Why is she crying, Mommy?" Her mother pulled her close and whispered back, "Sometimes people play music to tell stories they can't say with words." "Is it a sad story?" Her mother watched Maya, watched the intensity on her face, the way her whole body moved with the music. "It's a real story," she said finally. "And those are always a little bit sad and a little bit beautiful at the same time." Maya's song was reaching its conclusion now. The melody simplified, returning to something close to where it began, but not quite the same. It was transformed by everything that had come between. The final notes were quiet, almost whispered. They spoke of uncertainty, of not knowing what tomorrow would bring, but of continuing anyway. Of getting up every morning even when you don't want to. Of holding on to the smallest thread of hope because it's all you have. Her fingers pressed the final key. The note resonated through the silent restaurant, growing softer and softer until it finally faded away completely. Maya opened her eyes and took her hands off the keys. They were shaking. Her whole body was shaking. She had poured everything into those minutes of music. Every memory, every fear, every tiny spark of hope she still carried. The silence that followed was absolute. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. And then from somewhere in the back of the restaurant, someone started to clap. The applause started with one person, then two. Then suddenly the entire restaurant erupted. People rose from their seats, clapping so hard their hands hurt. Some were crying openly. Others stood in stunned silence, clapping mechanically, still processing what they had just witnessed. Maya sat frozen at the piano bench. She hadn't expected this. She hadn't expected anything, really. Playing the piano had been an impulse, a desperate need to touch something familiar. Something that connected her to who she used to be. Now she was surrounded by strangers applauding her, and she didn't know what to do. She stood up slowly, her legs unsteady. Her face was still wet with tears. She looked around the restaurant, seeing all these well-dressed people on their feet, looking at her with something she couldn't quite name. Not pity, something else. Respect, maybe. Recognition. The businessman at table 6 pulled out his phone. He held it up, hesitated for just a moment, then started recording. "The end was incredible," he muttered to himself. "But people need to see this. They need to know." He wasn't the only one. All around the restaurant, phones appeared. Some people had been recording the entire performance. Others, like the businessman, captured just the applause and Maya's stunned reaction. Within seconds, at least a dozen people were filming. The young woman in the business suit approached Maya carefully, as if afraid she might run. She reached into her purse and pulled out 2 $20 bills. "Here," she said, pressing them into Maya's hand. "Please, take it." Maya looked down at the money, then back up at the woman. "I can't." "You don't have to." "I want to," the woman said firmly. Her eyes were red from crying. "You gave us something beautiful tonight. Let us give you something back." Before Maya could respond, others began coming forward. The older man from table 6 approached with a $50 bill. "My daughter is your age," he said quietly. "I would hope someone would help her if she needed it." The mother with the birthday girl came next, her daughter trailing behind. She handed Maya $30. "You have an incredible gift," she said. Then her daughter, no more than 7 years old, held out a small pink purse. Inside were coins and a few dollar bills, probably birthday money. "You played so pretty," the little girl said shyly. "This is for you." Maya knelt down to the girl's level. Fresh tears spilled down her cheeks. "Thank you," she whispered. "But this is your birthday money. You should keep it." The little girl shook her head seriously. "Mommy says we should help people when we can. You need it more than me." One by one, people came forward. Some gave money. Others offered business cards. "Call me," said a woman who owned a music store. "I'd love to talk to you about giving lessons. Or performing. Or anything you need." A chef came out from the kitchen, still in his white uniform. He'd heard the music and come to see what was happening. Now he stood there with a bag of food. "Made you something special," he said, handing it to Maya. "You shouldn't have been turned away." That was wrong. Maya clutched the bag, feeling its warmth through the paper. The smell of fresh bread and hot soup made her stomach growl audibly. She couldn't remember the last time she'd been so hungry and suddenly had food right in her hands. Mr. Thornton stood off to the side, watching everything unfold. His expression had changed completely. The stern, disapproving look was gone. Now he just looked small and ashamed. He approached Maya hesitantly, clearly uncomfortable. "Miss," he started, then stopped. He seemed to be struggling for words. I was wrong. What I did was wrong. You asked for help and I turned you away. I judged you based on how you looked instead of who you are." He paused, swallowing hard. "I'm sorry. Truly sorry." Maya didn't know what to say. Part of her was still angry. Part of her understood that he was just a person who had made a mistake. She nodded slowly, acknowledging his apology without quite accepting it. "You can come here any time," Mr. Thornton continued. "Anytime you want to play, anytime you need a meal, please, consider this place open to you." The security guard stepped forward too. He looked embarrassed. "I'm sorry too," he said. "I was just doing my job, but that doesn't make it right." Maya looked at both of them. "I don't blame you," she said quietly. "People look at me and they see a problem. I understand that. I see it every day." She paused. "But I'm still a person. I still matter. Everyone does, no matter where they sleep at night." Her words hung in the air. Several people nodded. The woman in the business suit wiped her eyes again. Meanwhile, something else was happening. The businessman who had recorded the end of Maya's performance had posted it on social media. He'd written a simple caption. "Homeless girl refused service, then played piano like an angel. This is at the Grand Bistro downtown. Everyone needs to see this." Within minutes, his friends started sharing it. Then their friends. The video began spreading through the city like wildfire. People tagged other people. News outlets started picking it up. Local reporters began making phone calls trying to find out more information. But Maya didn't know any of this yet. She was still standing in the restaurant, overwhelmed by the kindness of strangers. She counted the money people had given her. Almost $200, more money than she'd had in months. Enough for a motel room for a few nights. Enough for food. Enough for a chance to figure out her next step. A woman approached her. She was older, maybe 60, with kind eyes and silver hair. "I'm Mrs. Chen," she said. "I run a community center a few blocks from here. We have resources for young people in your situation, counselors, job placement help, sometimes even temporary housing. Would you like to come by tomorrow?" Maya nodded, taking the card Mrs. Chen offered. Another lifeline. Another possibility. The restaurant was slowly returning to normal. People went back to their tables, though the conversation was different now. Quieter, more thoughtful. The little girl asked her parents why some people don't have homes. Her father tried to explain in simple terms about circumstances and bad luck and systems that don't always work the way they should. Maya gathered her things, the bag of food, the money, the business cards. It was surreal. An hour ago, she'd been hungry and desperate, turned away at the door. Now she had more than she'd had in weeks. But more than that, she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. She felt seen, not invisible, not like a problem to be moved along, like a person who mattered. As she walked toward the door, the restaurant broke into applause again. Maya turned and gave a small wave. Still overwhelmed by everything that had happened, she stepped out into the cold night air. The wind still bit at her face, but somehow it didn't feel as harsh as before. She had food, money, and possibilities. For tonight, that was enough. What Maya didn't know was that her life had just changed in ways she couldn't imagine. Across the city, thousands of people were watching her performance on their phones. News vans were already heading toward the Grand Bistro. Reporters were scrambling to find out who this mysterious homeless girl was. By morning, the video had been viewed over 1 million times. By afternoon, it would be international news. But for now, Maya walked down the street carrying her bag of warm food, thinking about finding a safe place to spend the night. She thought about Mrs. Chen's community center. She thought about the little girl who had given her birthday money. She thought about the music still echoing in her mind. For the first time in 3 months, Maya allowed herself to feel something dangerous, something she'd almost given up on completely: hope. Behind her, inside the Grand Bistro, Mr. Thornton's phone began to ring. It was the first of hundreds of calls the restaurant would receive that night. Some angry, some supportive. All of them because of a 17-year-old girl who had been refused a bowl of soup and instead gave them something far more valuable. She had reminded them of what it means to be human. Maya woke up to the sound of voices outside her subway station corner. She'd spent the night there. tucked into her usual spot behind a support beam where the security cameras didn't quite reach. The warm food from the restaurant had been the best thing she'd eaten in weeks. She'd saved half of it for breakfast, carefully wrapping it and placing it in her backpack. But something was different this morning. There were more people than usual, and they seemed to be looking for something. Or someone. "Excuse me, have you seen a young girl around here? Dark hair, probably carrying a backpack?" A woman's voice, professional and urgent. Maya peeked around the corner. There was a news van parked at the station entrance. A reporter with perfect hair and a microphone stood talking to commuters. Maya's stomach dropped. She grabbed her backpack and quickly moved deeper into the station, keeping her head down. She didn't understand what was happening. How could she? She had no phone, no internet, no way of knowing that she'd become famous overnight. The videos of her playing piano had exploded across every social media platform. By morning, they'd been viewed over 5 million times. News outlets from 3 different countries were running the story. Homeless teen's piano performance stuns restaurant guests. Girl refused service, then plays like a professional. Viral video shows the talent society overlooks. The headlines were everywhere. People were debating in comment sections. Some criticized the Grand Bistro for initially turning Maya away. Others praised Mr. Thornton for apologizing. But mostly people were amazed by the music, by the raw emotion, by the reminder that genius and talent can exist anywhere, in anyone. Maya made her way to the public library, her usual refuge during the day. It was warm, quiet, and had bathrooms where she could wash up. The librarian, Mrs. Patterson, had always been kind to her. She never asked questions, never made Maya feel unwelcome. But today when Maya walked through the doors, Mrs. Patterson's eyes went wide. "Oh my goodness," she breathed. "It's you! You're the girl from the video." Maya froze. "What video?" Mrs. Patterson came around the desk, moving faster than Maya had ever seen her move. "You don't know? Dear, you're all over the internet. Here, come look." She led Maya to one of the public computers and pulled up a video. Maya watched in disbelief as she saw herself at the piano. The camera angle was from someone's phone, shaky but clear enough. She watched herself play, watched the tears on her face, watched the transformation of everyone in the restaurant. The view count read 8.2 million. Maya's hands started shaking. "I don't understand. How did this? Why are so many people?" "Because it's beautiful," Mrs. Patterson said softly, "and real. People are hungry for something real." She scrolled down to the comments. Thousands of them. "This made me cry. Why isn't she in a music school? Someone help this girl. I've been having the worst week, and this reminded me that beauty still exists in the world. We pass by people like her every day and never see them, really see them." Maya read comment after comment, her mind reeling. Mrs. Patterson showed her more videos, different angles from different phones, all showing the same moment. Some focused on her face. Others showed the reactions of the people in the restaurant. One showed the little girl giving Maya her birthday money, which had people crying all over again. "There's more," Mrs. Patterson said gently. She pulled up a news article. "The Riverside School of Music issued a statement this morning. They're offering you a full scholarship, housing included. And look at this one. A famous concert pianist, someone named Catherine Wells, says she knew your mother. She wants to meet you." Maya felt dizzy. Catherine Wells, she remembered that name. Her mother had talked about her once years ago. They'd studied together, been friends before life took them in different directions. "There are job offers too," Mrs. Patterson continued. "People wanting to hire you to play at events. And this fundraising page, someone started it last night. They've raised over $30,000 for you." $30,000. Maya couldn't even comprehend that number. She'd been surviving on a few dollars a day. Now strangers from around the world were giving money to help her, but she also felt scared. This was too much, too fast. Yesterday she was invisible. Today everyone was looking for her. What did they want from her? What did this all mean? "You should know," Mrs. Patterson said carefully. "There are reporters looking for you. They've been calling the library. They're at the subway stations. Everyone wants to interview you." Maya stood up quickly, panic rising in her chest. "I need to go." "Wait." Mrs. Patterson put a gentle hand on her arm. "I know this is overwhelming. But Maya, this could change your life. Really change it. You don't have to hide," but Maya wasn't ready. She grabbed her backpack and headed for the door, then stopped. She turned back to Mrs. Patterson. "Thank you for always being kind to me, even before all this." The older woman's eyes filled with tears. "You take care of yourself, honey, and when you're ready to face all this, you come back here. I'll help you figure it out." Maya spent the rest of the day moving through the city, trying to process everything. She saw her own face on a phone screen when someone walked by watching the video. She heard people talking about that homeless girl who played piano. It was surreal, like watching her life become a story that didn't quite belong to her anymore. By evening, she found herself at Mrs. Chen's community center. The older woman from the restaurant had given her the address. Maya stood outside for a long time before finally going in. Mrs. Chen looked up from her desk and smiled. "I was hoping you'd come. Have you seen the news?" "Some of it," Maya admitted quietly. "Come sit." Mrs. Chen gestured to a chair. "I imagine you're feeling very overwhelmed right now." Maya sat down and suddenly everything poured out. The fear, the confusion, the guilt about having so much attention when there were so many other people on the streets who needed help just as badly. "Why me?" Maya asked, her voice breaking. "There are hundreds of homeless people in this city, thousands. Why do people care about me just because I can play piano? What about everyone else?" Mrs. Chen nodded thoughtfully. "You're right. It's not fair that it takes a viral video for people to pay attention. But Maya, sometimes one story opens people's eyes to the bigger picture. You didn't just show them that you have talent. You showed them that homeless people are real people with gifts and dreams and value. You made them look. That matters, but what do I do now?" Maya whispered. "Everyone wants something from me. Interviews, performances, my story. I don't know how to be this person everyone suddenly cares about." "You don't have to be anyone except yourself," Mrs. Chen said firmly. "The same person you were yesterday. But now you have opportunities, real opportunities to change your situation, and maybe to help others too." She pulled out a folder. "I've been taking calls all day. Real offers, not just people wanting to gawk. The music school scholarship is legitimate. Catherine Wells really does want to meet you. And there are organizations that want to work with you to raise awareness about youth homelessness." She paused. "But only if you want to. This is your life, Maya. Your choice." Maya looked at the folder. Inside was her future laid out in documents and offers. A scholarship application, contact information, letters from strangers offering help, support, opportunities. For 3 months she'd had nothing. No choices, no control, no path forward. Just survival, one day at a time. Now she had too many choices, and it was terrifying. "Can I think about it?" she asked. "Of course," Mrs. Chen said. "But Maya, there's something you should know. The news crews, they know about this community center. They'll probably find you here eventually. You're going to have to face this sooner or later." Maya nodded slowly. She knew Mrs. Chen was right. She couldn't hide forever. And maybe, just maybe, she didn't want to. That night, Maya did something she hadn't done in months. She allowed herself to dream, not just about survival, but about actually living, about going to music school, about playing piano in concert halls instead of fighting for space in subway stations, about having a real home again. It was terrifying and exciting and overwhelming all at once. Outside, the world continued to buzz with her story. More videos were shared. More articles were written. More people debated and discussed and shared their opinions. The Grand Bistro was flooded with customers wanting to see where it happened. Mr. Thornton gave interviews, repeatedly apologizing for his initial treatment of Maya. But inside the community center, in a small room with a cot and clean sheets, Maya slept peacefully for the first time in months. Tomorrow she would have to make decisions. Tomorrow she would step into whatever came next, but tonight she was safe. She was warm, and she was beginning to believe that maybe, just maybe, everything was going to be okay. Maya woke up to sunlight streaming through a real window. For a moment she forgot where she was. Then it all came back. The community center, the videos, the scholarship offer. Everything that had happened in the past 48 hours felt like a dream. There was a soft knock on the door. Mrs. Chen peeked in. "Good morning. There's someone here to see you." "Catherine Wells, she's waiting in my office whenever you're ready." Maya's heart jumped. Catherine Wells, the concert pianist who had known her mother. She got dressed quickly, her hands trembling as she tried to smooth down her hair. This woman had played in symphony halls around the world. What would she think of Maya? When Maya entered the office, she saw an elegant woman in her 50s sitting by the window. Catherine Wells had kind eyes and silver streaks in her dark hair. When she saw Maya, she stood up slowly, her hand going to her mouth. "Oh my," she whispered. "You look just like her. Just like your mother when she was young." Maya didn't know what to say. Catherine crossed the room and gently took Maya's hands in hers. "I saw the video," Catherine said, "and I heard your mother in every note you played. Her technique, yes, but more than that. Her heart. The way she taught you to feel the music, not just play it." Tears welled up in her eyes. "Your mother was my dearest friend. When she got sick, I was touring in Europe. By the time I came back, she was gone. I tried to find you, but you disappeared into the foster system. I've been looking for 2 years." Maya felt her own tears starting. "You were looking for me?" "Of course I was. Your mother made me promise before she died that I would look after you if anything happened. I failed her. But I'm here now and I want to make things right." They sat down together and Catherine explained everything. The scholarship to Riverside School of Music was real and fully funded. But more than that, Catherine wanted to mentor Maya personally, to help her develop her gift the way her mother would have wanted. "I'm not trying to replace your mother," Catherine said gently. "No one could. But I can honor her memory by helping you, if you'll let me." Maya nodded, unable to speak through her tears. For the first time since her mother died, she didn't feel completely alone. Over the next few days, Maya's life transformed in ways she couldn't have imagined. With Mrs. Chen's help, she accepted the scholarship. Catherine helped her navigate the legal paperwork and got her set up with a counselor who specialized in helping young people who'd experienced homelessness. The fundraising page had grown to over $75,000. Maya insisted that half of it go to Mrs. Chen's community center to help other homeless youth. The rest would help her with expenses the scholarship didn't cover. But Maya did something else too, something that surprised everyone. She agreed to one interview, just one, with a small local news station known for treating people with dignity and respect. The reporter, a woman named Jennifer, sat with Maya in the community center and asked thoughtful questions. "What do you want people to understand about homelessness?" Jennifer asked. Maya thought carefully before answering. "That we're not invisible. We're not statistics. Every person you pass on the street has a story. They had dreams once. They had families and talents and things they cared about. Nobody plans to become homeless. It just happens, usually because of things outside your control. And once you're there, it's so hard to get out because people stop seeing you as human." What would you say to other young people in similar situations? That you still matter, even when it feels like nobody sees you. Even when you're hungry and cold and scared, you still have value. Hold on to whatever gift you have, whatever makes you feel like yourself. For me, it was the music my mother taught me. That's what kept me connected to who I really am. Maya paused and asked for help. "I know it's hard. I know it feels like admitting defeat. But there are people who care. Mrs. Chen, Mrs. Patterson at the library, Catherine Wells. Good people exist. Let them help you."